Well, good morning, everybody, and welcome back to the ROS Media channel. We are here today for our webinar Q&A session, back together again with Ian Clifford, our founder and our president of the Republic of Old Souls. Welcome back, Ian. Good to have you with us.
Yeah, good day, everybody. Good to be here again and hopefully shed some light on what I presented a few days ago.
Yes, indeed. Well, if you are a landlord, you probably already know the system's declared war on you at the moment. You know, there's punitive tax changes, there's aggressive HMRC targeting that's going on, this great taking of property rights. I think the era of the passive property investor is over. And today we're going to talk about how to deal with that. We're not talking about managing properties. We're going to show you how to ring fence those assets, how to eliminate this legal fiction of mortgages, how to move your portfolio into a jurisdiction where the Crown can't reach it. So pay attention, guys, because the window to moving those assets behind this shield is fast closing. If you watched the webinar on Saturday, then what we've got here, as per usual, is all the questions from the webinar that we've now pulled into today's Q&A session. We're going to cover them all one by one. We've broken them down into categories. There were some duplicate questions. So if you don't hear your question word for word, that's because we've taken all of the duplicates and we've just consolidated those down. So we will cover it. But as per usually, and maybe the first thing that we should do here is just sort of talk a little bit about the problem at hand. You know, what is this war on property that people are facing right now?
Well, yeah, as I presented on the webinar, it's a trap. It's another trap that's been set to lure people in, to get them into massive amounts of debt, and then to change the tax legislation, and then try and do assessments. HMRC doing assessments on past years, which for many landlords is catastrophic, because if you were a landlord 20-25 years ago, or thinking of becoming a landlord, and you knew that you couldn't set the interest costs of the mortgages off against the rental revenues, you probably wouldn't have gone into it. Some landlords have built very large portfolios of property, and they took advantage of, and you couldn't blame them, took advantage of relatively easy to get mortgages that were affordable given the demand for rent.
Yeah,
in the rental sector. And in my world of the managing finances, there's something called an arbitrage, which is the difference between what you're receiving and what you're paying out. And the model looked pretty good. If you could buy the properties at the right price, and if you could get the mortgages and make sure that the expenses on the mortgages were covered by the rent, you'd probably make a passive income for a number of years. And it was reasonably straightforward to manage the portfolios. And nothing's easy, but if you got the right maintenance crew in, if you got the right agents in to collect the rent for you, or maybe you did it yourself through a process, you could probably run those portfolios. Once you've built them up, you could probably run them without that many problems, until the HMRC changed tax legislation, so that you can no longer set the mortgage interest against the revenues that are coming in, and you're being taxed on the gross revenue that's coming in, which probably is going to destroy the arbitrage, the difference between the rents coming in and the expenses going out. So your model is broken if you're in that situation. So what did the landlords do? They turned to the so-called experts for a solution, and set up these SIS schemes, which were effectively making the revenues corporate revenue. So putting all the revenues into a corporation with a trust, so that the interest on the mortgages could then be set against the revenues coming in. And that worked. It appeared to work for a few years. But, you know, when I looked at it, I think it was 2016 it came in. When I looked at it, I thought it's only a matter of time before HMRC disqualify this, because they'll just say it's a scheme. They'll just look at the substance of it. Who are the mortgages? What name is on the mortgages? Well, if the name of the birth certificate construct, the person, the citizen, his name is on the mortgage, and historically the rental revenues coming in, and it's like a sole trader scenario, a sole trader with a bunch of mortgages and a bunch of rents coming in, they'll just say that anything that's been structured to avoid the gross tax, the tax on the gross revenue, is a scheme. It's they'll just say it's a sham. And they'll look through the company and the trust and say, well, actually, the substance of this is that the mortgages are still in the name of the landlord as the body corporate birth certificate construct. And the fact that some company's been set up are in a trust as well, they'll just look through that and say it doesn't work, basically, from HMRC's viewpoint. And you can argue, well, you know, what right does HMRC got in changing tax legislation? You know, what right have they got to do that? Well, unfortunately, they often change tax legislation, or they change the interpretation of what things mean. So one interpretation could mean that you could do something and avoid taxes, and then a change in interpretation of legislation disqualifies that former interpretation, and they do that quite often.
Yeah.
The English language is very complex, and you can make words mean different things. So if you're HMRC and you want to interpret a paragraph or a phrase or a sentence in tax legislation a different way, you can do it. And then you get your friends in the courts to uphold that. The judges, who are obviously going to be siding with HMRC because they're all part of the same club. Yeah. And then you're up against it. So even if something looked like it was viable and a lot of other people were doing it in the past, and certainly setting mortgage interest against the revenue was something which most people did. And it went on for years and years. And nobody really ever thought that was probably ever likely to come to an end, because the consequences of it are obvious. If you destroy the landlord model, that is going to cause a lot of properties to be sold. Well, who's going to buy them, and what price are they going to pay? It's the old saying in you know, because I'm come from investment management, wealth management, who's going to grasp the falling knife?
Okay, I like that.
So that's the war on property. Now, why are they doing it? Why is HMRC doing it? It's because there is a agenda, if you look in Agenda 2030, where they want state-owned property. And they want to basically rent it back to the citizens, who then have to comply with the various control framework that is rolling in all around us. And if you don't comply, well, you know, they've got you because you're in their house. If you don't comply, maybe you'll lose the house that you're living in, as you know, along with your social score, which is going to critique your behaviour, and your basic income that's going to be doled out to you every week, every month. You get somewhere to live, but only if you basically comply with whatever the rules are of the game as we go forward. And that's really what it's about. It's forcing private property ownership, which is only the equitable title of property, of course, into state ownership. And that it's a gradual move towards that. And I think the writing's on the wall. I've been saying for 20 years that the bubble of property in the UK and other countries will burst at some point, because nothing ever goes up and up and up forever without coming down.
No.
and all of the environment of property values going up and up and up and up, ahead of inflation. It's quite extraordinary. If you look at property values, they typically appreciate greater than the level of inflation. They have historically always done that. If you really get your head into how economics works, that doesn't work. Actually, on the monopoly board, it doesn't work forever. There's always going to be a massive correction at some point, and it's a boom and a bust. And every asset class has a boom and a bust, and property is like a steady boom. It's like a gradual boom going upwards. And in my opinion, and I've said it for years, if people think that all you've got to do is buy property and sit back and you'll be protected, it's another trap. So for me, the landlord problem is part of a bigger problem. In the United Kingdom, all the citizens of the United Kingdom, if you did a poll and asked, hundreds of them, do you think property is a good investment? Majority would say, yeah, it's a great investment. It always goes up in value. So, get yourself a property, make sure I pay off the mortgage, and I'm made for life, kind of thing. It's like, that's that model. I don't believe that model is going to carry on, personally.
No. And I think it's seeping into other countries as well. I think the US is very similar in terms of what landlords are facing over there. They've got rising interest rates. They've got ridiculous HOA fees that are just squeezing them as well. There's a lot of people over there that are finding it a very difficult model to sustain now. So
and the Australian example is there's so many landlords in Australia. It's quite extraordinary. The percentage of home ownership not property ownership, not home ownership in Australia. There's huge numbers of landlords there. Massive boom there of properties that were built for the landlord market. So again, it's another trap. I always say, if things look too good to be true, they probably are.
And I think there's a shift as well.
Not in every case, but
there's a shift between the buying market and the rental market as well. You can see that's been happening for quite some time now. Years ago, if you wanted to rent a property, there were plenty available, plenty out there, plenty for you to choose from. Now, if you look at the rental market versus the for sale market, there's thousands of properties for sale that just aren't selling, and there's nothing available for people to rent. Very, very few properties to rent now. So it's a huge problem. Well, shall we dig into the questions, Ian, from Saturday? Because we've had quite a few questions with reference to the actual process. What countries does it work in? There's a number of different sections. So I've kind of broke this down into categories. The first question that we've got is, why are we here at the Republic of Old Souls, why are we confident that the landlord protocol won't be considered a retractive target by HMRC in the next 3 to 5 years? If they can change the goalposts on what's caused this problem, could that be a repeating scenario, I guess, is the question for the protocol itself?
Well, I mean, the strategy behind the protocol is to stall and delay any action that might be going on. If a landlord is under attack by HMRC, one of the tactics of the art of legal warfare is to stall the opponent, is to stall the HMRC, so that you've got time to get your house in order, which is the signature credit recoupment, because that takes 6 to 9 months before it materializes. You need a strategy to try and stall HMRC. The whole protocol it's not necessarily thinking you're going to win against HMRC. If there's the HMRC aspect of it, which is a stalling tactic, and then you've got if you want to, you don't have to do this, but you can take up a case against the promoters of the scheme, which was the SIS scheme. And may or may not win. I mean, I think the case against the promoters is very strong. But the main purpose of the HMRC case is to stall it. And in my experience, the type of challenge that can be mounted, which is, based on the fundamentals of whether there is a definition of income or gain, and also there's some weaknesses in HMRC, how they rolled out the legislation. All of that can be challenged. And if anybody's got experience in how court cases go, they don't finalise quickly. It can take a long time. You can be in a court process for several years. So whilst all that's going on, the real strategy, the one that is going to solve the problem, is the recoupment of signature credit taxes, and then you use that to discharge all the problems, and then shift all the properties into the asset fortress protocol. And now you've won the game, because you stalled the enemy. You held them at the gates whilst you were, making sure your house was completely in order. And they can't really stop you taking them to court, because everyone's got the right. So it's not to try and win against HMRC, because if you look into it, which I've done, there's very few people that have ever beaten HMRC. Very few.
Yeah. Again, it's all down to a peaceful solution, isn't it? Which is what we talk about here. Not going to war in that way, but using the art of legal warfare in a strategic way to buy time. Okay. So next question is, for those being threatened by the land registry or local councils regarding lawful taxes, how does this protocol re-establish the living person's authority over the land? I don't think people are quite getting it here.
Yeah, well, you can't really do that, because the Monopoly Board, the way it's been set up, and I'm going to say it again, it's all about the agency trap.
Yeah.
So the living man, woman is the agent for the birth certificate construct, the citizen, the person, and you can't easily break that agency. And all these attempts that people make by issuing documents and, making different pronouncements and declarations and affidavits and notices and all of these things don't change the fact that the living man or woman is the agent of the body corporate birth certificate construct. So they've trapped you again. That's the trap that most people don't realise, is that agency is there from the birth certificate registration. So again, what you can do is that you can correct and you can improve the standing of the who's got ultimate control over the birth certificate construct, which is the person. But you can't take away the agency completely. What you can do is you can play the game at the advanced level, set up the grantor trust, one for recouping the signature credit and the other one for managing the Monopoly Board game through a player piece, which is the asset fortress protocol. I actually did a video on this yesterday. So I did a video on the asset fortress protocol about how you can use it as a new player piece on the Monopoly Board. You can't always win. The trap is very clever. The citizen person birth certificate agency trap is very tough to beat. But what you can do, you can put a new player piece on the Monopoly Board, and you can play your game of Monopoly through that player piece with some advanced moves, which is all about signature credit recoupment and transferring property in, the title of property into the trust. It's an international jurisdiction. It doesn't have to report taxes or anything else. So you can win. You can win by a parallel strategy, whilst you're fending them off at the gates with your art of legal warfare stuff. That's how I see it. I'm realistic enough to know that beating the council is very difficult, and very few people have ever achieved it. There are stalling mechanisms and tactics that you can employ. With the council, there are stalling and delay tactics that you can employ with HMRC. But you're probably not going to win in the long run, because they've rigged the game, because the living man woman is the agent for the birth certificate construct, and you can't really easily get away from that. That's the problem.
No, we spoke about this yesterday, didn't we? It is a curse, but on the flip side, it is also a blessing, because of how you can use that agency to create this parallel playing piece and just play the game at a better level. So, for people,
they're giving you the problem and the solution all wrapped up in the same agency. And if you don't know that you can create a separate player piece, which is the asset fortress protocol and the 1099 OID grant or trust, if you don't know that, then you're only ever going to be suffering from the curse of the agency. You're never going to get the benefit of the agency. So it's really knowing how to play the game with the ultimate power move, which is to create those trusts.
Which you can't do without that agency, can you? That's the blessing part of it. And I think people are getting too caught up in some complete separation of the living man from the body corporate entity. And you can't create that. You cannot sever those ties. If you did sever those ties, recoupment wouldn't work, asset fortress wouldn't work. None of these constructs that you've put together in the protocols would even work. So, I think it's important that people understand that while agency is creating a lot of problems for people right now, the fact that you have it can create a solution for you. So it's not a case of fighting to try and sever all ties. It's a case of just putting that parallel or those parallel constructs in place just to play the game better. That's all it's about.
Yeah, you've got magical powers available to you by creating the player piece, which is the grantor trust, which is the asset fortress protocol, and the tax filing trust, which is the 1099 OID grantor trust. You've got the magical power to be able to create those and to get them to work for you, and that isn't possible. They wouldn't be possible unless the living man woman was the agent for the birth certificate, because the birth certificate construct is what's being used to create the trust, the grantor for both of the trusts. If you were separate from, if the living man woman was separate from the birth certificate construct, the person, the citizen, you wouldn't be able to create the trust, and you wouldn't be able to be the beneficiary of the asset fortress or the grantor trust that is filing the 1099 OID. So you've got two trusts on the monopoly board. The birth certificate construct is the grantor for both, and the beneficiary for both. Now, if you weren't the agent for the birth certificate construct, you couldn't be the beneficiary and you couldn't be the grantor. And for the asset fortress, you couldn't be the trustee. When I say you, the birth certificate construct couldn't be the trustee. So you see, that's the blessing here, is it gives you that opportunity to create these two new entities that you're sitting on the monopoly board because of the agency. So they give you see what I've realized in all my studies is that they give you the problem, but they also give you the solution as well. But the solution isn't easy to see. The problem's in your face, but the solution isn't that easy to recognize or to identify.
No. Okay. So moving on, I know we've covered this very slightly at the very beginning when we spoke about the problem itself and what the agenda is. But again, in trueness to the Q&A, we'll cover the question because it was asked. What is the government's true agenda regarding private rentals, and how does this protocol prevent them from forcing landlords to sell at a loss?
Well, because the protocol is designed to solve the problem. The problem is the mortgage, the mortgage and the tax. So you've got two problems. You've got mortgage, which the interest rate can go sky high, and that's going to cause a big problem, and that may well happen. And then you've got the tax. You've got to pay tax on the gross revenue, because the properties are held in the name of the birth certificate construct. And the birth certificate construct is a debtor that has to pay taxes. Yep. So if you can remove the mortgages, that solves that problem. And you use the signature credit recoupment ultimately to discharge the mortgages and then recoup the discharge. And then you move the properties from the birth certificate construct, the citizen, the person, into the asset fortress protocol, where it no longer has to report the revenue that's coming in. So you've solved the debt problem and you've solved the tax problem, and now you've got all the asset or the asset value of the property held in an international trust, which doesn't have to report to HMRC. So they don't have any legitimate attack. They can't really attack the asset fortress because they don't have jurisdiction to attack it.
Okay. Let's move on to the next category, which is more to do with sort of the mechanics and just protection of people's portfolio. So one of the questions we had here is, how do landlords with limited companies protect themselves compared to those holding property in their own names?
Well, if a limited company's got the mortgage, it is the mortgagor, the borrower, let's just use common parlance, it's not really that much of a problem, apart from the fact that property values are probably going to fall, in my opinion. And rents may be difficult. They might be difficult to collect because there's other legislation which is giving tenants so many rights. Yeah, they can basically stop paying the rent, and they've still got rights to live in the house. It's quite extraordinary.
Crazy.
Yeah. And so the landlord model is broken on two levels. It's broken on tax, but it's also broken on the rights of the landlord. To me, they've attacked it on the two Achilles heels of the landlord have both been attacked at the same time. So again, if you don't have a debt, if there's no mortgage to service because you've discharged it through signature credit recoupment, and then it's not as critical. The revenues coming in are not as critical, are they? Because you haven't got all these high expenses to come out. So whether the mortgages are in the name of the citizen, the person, or whether they're in the name of a company, the best thing, in my opinion, the best thing to do is to get rid of the debt, is to discharge the debt, and that you can do that through the signature credit recoupment, and then move the properties into the trust. The limited company model, my guess is that they'll attack that as well, because those landlords who set companies up and then got the mortgages in the companies, they'll probably attack that next as well.
Yeah, because it's all part of the bigger agenda, like you said at the beginning. They want to institutionalize the properties, don't they? They don't want it to be in the domestic market. Okay. So next question, how does the authenticated certificate of birth allow a landlord to establish full faith and credit over their titles, effectively removing the legal fiction of the debt?
Well, I think what that question is about is really asking about a allodial title. So that means fee simple allodial title. Now, the problem with that, and I've looked into this in great detail, the problem is that the legal title of all property is already with the state, the world state, the local state, the cabal. On the monopoly board itself, where all the property is sitting, the cabal, because they took a mortgage out, they took a mortgage out over all the energy of the people and all the assets. So they've got this mortgage, and they hold the legal title. It's all held in various trusts, if you get really deep into it. So nobody really, unless there is a pre-existing, church land, for example, some church land, you can actually get the allodial title because the church still retained ownership, and there's something in the deeds to the property that enable the church to give up the allodial title, to give up the fee simple in certain circumstances. It's quite rare. In the United States, there's certain bits of land that you can get the allodial or fee simple title to, because there was a declaration made in 1700 and something that certain bits of land, like Indian land, belongs to the Indians. So it's like the churches have got some land, the Indians in the United States have got some land, and the state couldn't get a mortgage over those parcels of land. And in that situation, you can then move you can shift case by case, but there is an opportunity if the circumstances are right to shift the allodial title. But I'm going to challenge this, right? Because on the game of Monopoly, everything on the Monopoly board is artificial. What you can do is you can use the property. So you have the equitable title and you move that. So once you've extinguished the mortgages, you've discharged the mortgages, then you move the equitable title of the property, which is what everyone's got anyway in the name of the birth certificate, into the trust. So now the trust, the Asset Fortress Protocol, holds the equitable title, which is the use of the property, right? So you've moved the equitable title into the Asset Fortress Protocol, and the beneficiary of the Asset Fortress Protocol is the living man woman. Who now use the property. And the equitable title is in their own trust on the Monopoly board without having to report, pay taxes, comply with local legislation. So you've got the next best thing. I remember having a chat to somebody a long time ago about owning a car or renting a car on a lease, right? And the guy that I was talking to said, "Oh no, I need to own the car." And I said, "Well, do you really own it?" And he said, "Well, yeah, I've got the documents here. This is my car." I said, "Not really. Those documents are already registered to the DVLA because it was in the UK." I said, "So they own the car?" He said, No, I own the car." I said, "No, you don't. You might as well rent the car or take a lease out on the car, because you all you've got at the moment is the right to use the car." And he said, "No, I've got the title document here." I said, "No, what you've got there is the equitable title. You haven't got the legal title of the car. That's already registered to the to the cabal, to the state." So in the same way as all the houses are all registered to the state. So all you've got really is the right to use them. And if you can increase the right to use, you can use the house, you can use the asset because it's in the Asset Fortress Protocol. Now you can use it and you can pass the right to use it down to your heirs, but you don't have to report it. You don't have to pay taxes on it because you've moved it from one player piece on the Monopoly board, which is the citizen person player piece. You've moved it in another player piece, which you've got absolute control over, which is the Asset Protocol. But you still get to use it. But this notion and then people think they own things. This is where the problem is. Nobody owns anything. The Monopoly board is artificial. It's all in debt. All you've got is the right to use things. You're never going to own them unless you can get a allodial title, which is very difficult to get.
No, I get that. Just going back to your example of the car, I think if any of you look at your V5 document here in the UK, you'll see that it says registered keeper, not registered owner of the vehicle.
So we all have this notion, and I had it for a long time as well, that you can add up all the assets that you think you've got, and you can take away all the liabilities, and you can say, "Look at my net worth. Isn't that fantastic? I've got a high net worth." If you're in that situation, you don't really, because everything on the Monopoly board is a negative anyway.
No, I mean, it makes total sense to me now that I understand how it works, but I can also understand how people learning this for the first time would find it difficult to wrap their head around. So, okay. Next question.
It's all inverted.
Can this protocol be used to wipe out existing mortgages, eliminate 10 plus years of built up interest on equity release, or stop active possession orders?
Well, it depends on the circumstances. If there's a possession order and the bailiffs are coming, in 2 days' time, it's unlikely that you'd be able to do much about that. But if there's time, in the same way as what you can do with HMRC is to store them. You hold them at the gates. You file. You use the art of legal warfare to hold them at the gates. You find something in their case which is breaching what they call the practice protocols. So there's like a rule book in the legal system, which all the lawyers and the judges, they have to follow the practice protocols, CPR as they call them. So there's normally something in there that hasn't been followed to the letter of the procedures, because they're all procedures really. And if you look at how the lawyers conduct themselves, and you look at how the courts conduct themselves, it's normally the lawyers that miss something out. They don't file in the right order, or they file late, or they railroad something, or they forget to do something. There's normally some procedural error. In fact, I've never seen a case where there hasn't been a procedural error somewhere. So you focus on that, and you use that to stall whilst you're setting up your the ultimate solution, which is the 2 grantor trusts, signature credit recoupment, and then the spend and recouping and discharging of all the debt. That is the ultimate solution to nearly every single problem on the monopoly board.
I think basically the questions that we've got are all they're all different scenarios, different situations, but ultimately they all stem back to the same solution, what you've just mentioned here. For example, the next question, is there a step-by-step process to ring fence a portfolio so children can inherit it without the Crown or the government taking their share?
Yeah, I mean, the way to do that is all in the Asset Fortress Protocol. So you set that up, and you then name all of the beneficiaries. Then you can have them in a ranking order. So you can have as many people in there as you want as beneficiaries. And, you can dictate in the indenture, that's the rule book of the trust. It's like the Bible of the trust, the rules of the road for the trust, and who gets what when. It's just like a will, really. So you can have your heirs, your kids, your grandkids, your whoever, someone else, your boyfriend, your girlfriend, whoever it is that you want to put it in there as a beneficiary. You can put all that in there. And then you see that the Asset Fortress doesn't die when you die.
No. Because
if you look at why that is, I don't suppose there's a question, but it's probably worth explaining it. The Asset Fortress Protocol it's a artificial construct. It doesn't die. It doesn't have a heart. It doesn't have blood. It doesn't have energy. It only operates because of the grantor has created it, and the beneficiaries are the living. And the grantor writes into the trust indenture what they want to achieve for the beneficiaries. The beneficiaries are always living, but if the first beneficiary dies, it doesn't mean that the trust itself dies, because the trust stays in perpetuity. Because in the trust indenture, it will enable a successor trustee. It will enable other beneficiaries to take over. So once you've got this set up, and this is what the rich families have been doing for years, they've got family trusts, and all through the generations, the trust stays in place, but the people benefiting from the trust come and go, of course, because no one lives forever.
I think that is a good one to address, though, because some people might be thinking, well, okay, I get that it's not living, I get that it's not flesh and blood, it doesn't have energy, but when you set a trust up, does it have an expiry date to it? Does it only last for a certain amount of years? Like when I set an insurance policy up, it might have a term to it, a 15-year or 20-year term or whatever. But from what you're saying, that's not the case.
Well, if you think of it like a company, right? So think of a company that's been around for hundreds of years. There's lots of examples of companies that were formed hundreds of years ago. And all the people that operated the company, the shareholders, the directors, they've all long gone and new people come in. The company and the trusts are very similar. They're just artificial constructs. They don't die when the people die. They carry on. If they're successors, the company, the trust carries on.
Okay. So moving on to the next section, which is this one, timelines and the strategic transition. So questions that we've had on this subject matter is how long, the golden question, Ian, how long does the process take from the moment we initiate the protocol to the moment we can lawfully stop paying the bank or lease? So I'll tread carefully on that one, because that sounds like somebody's wanting to know a timeline as to when they can stop paying their mortgage or stop paying their lease on a commercial property or whatever it is. I'll leave that with you to answer, Ian.
Yeah. So what we're going to deliver, subject to demand, is two things. One is an Ian Clifford avatar, which will have a whole knowledge base in it. That if you're in this situation going forward, you'll be able to ask questions to the Ian Clifford avatar, which will draw on the knowledge base that's been put into the avatar system. So it will give you a pathway as to what I would do if in the situation that you're in. That's basically the idea. And then the second aspect of it is that there will be a AI system which you will be able to access, that will be able, you'll be able to load in any documents, court documents, papers, whatever it is that you are facing, whatever's coming towards you, and you'll be able to put it in there, and it will be able to tell you, not only tell you, but it will actually produce the court papers, documents, responses that you need to hold the enemy at the gates. And you can ask Ian Clifford, the avatar, what to do about this, that, and the other. And it should be able to say, well, if Ian was in that situation, this is what he'll do. This is what he would do. That's the idea behind it. And while that's going on, of course, the actual solution is the signature credit recoupment, creating the grantor trust, finding the mortgage securities, all of that stuff, which our team does. You're looking at 6 to 9 months to get the signature credit recoupment. But the avatar and the AI system, if there's enough demand, we'll create that based upon our huge knowledge base. So the avatar isn't giving legal advice, and the AI system isn't acting as a lawyer. It's acting as an administrator, following instructions from the user, which is, you know, the members who want to use it. And that way it can be rolled out. And it can be managed at scale, because there's no way that, you know, we would be able to manage hundreds, thousands of landlord cases. It just wouldn't be viable. So, and we wouldn't want to do it, to be quite frank, because there's a bit of a fine line between, you know, what is advice and what isn't. So you've got to be quite careful here. So.
Okay. But as you said, they can self-manage their own cases with a knowledge base to help and some administration help as well.
Absolutely, yeah. And that's, I think it's the best solution for all of these art of legal warfare type strategies. That you've got an avatar and you've got an AI, and you manage your own case. And if you're really motivated to do it, which you should be if you're up against it, what a great way to learn. What a great way to learn.
Yeah. And buy time, as we said. The goal here isn't to win, it's to buy time while you're setting everything up in the background for that alternative solution. That's what we're looking at here. Okay. So another question here. Not quite sure about this one, Ian. I don't think, again, this is coming from a place of true knowledge and understanding. For those who have been waiting on property-based recoupments since 2022, well, I don't believe we've been doing mortgage security recoupments other than since last year. I think we launched that last year, didn't we? Late last year, mortgage security recoupment. But let's just say it's ordinary recoupment, okay? So for those who've been waiting on recoupment since 2022, what is the strategic reason for the current delay and the projected completion window? Well, there's no strategic reason why we're delaying. We haven't got a delay strategy. Our strategy is to get it done as quickly as we possibly can. That's the strategy. So I think the reasons why we've been through this on a number of occasions, maybe just an elevator view for the purpose of answering the question.
I get a little bit confused about, I think this is like rumors and suppositions, because we didn't do recoupments in 2022.
No.
We did a pilot scheme in 2023, and we had multiple successes and people got checks. 5 checks were distributed in 2020 in the pilot scheme from 23 into 24. And then the majority of the members of Matrix Freedom started their recoupments in 2024. And we didn't do mortgage security recoupments until 2025. So I don't know what that question means about property recoupment from 2022. I think that is a misunderstanding. And, you know, we've documented this and discussed this and presented this a number of times. You know, the 2025 sabotage is the reason why recoupments weren't distributed at the end of 2025 when they should have been. But we did get the wages and tax transcripts as evidence of the process working, and we have refiled for everyone who wants to carry on with the process in 2026. That's all we can do. I mean, there's a huge amount of consequences that flowed from the sabotage event of September of 2025, which I've written about, and Andy and I have spoken about it a number of times. I've spoken about it on webinars. I've sent documents out to the members on updates. So if you're asking that question and you haven't read or haven't watched any of the previous material, I suggest you do. If you want to know what happened, basically there was a sabotage by a number of people that were misled, and they were led down a garden path, believing things that were untrue, which caused them to sabotage the entire recoupment program for all of the members. And there were lots of reasons why that happened. It wasn't just one reason, and we've had to recover from it. But the process that we adopted hasn't changed. The 2025 process, the Clifford Protocol, actually delivered for the ex-head of tax, which is Lisa Griffin. She got her recoupments before the sabotage attempt happened. Sabotage event happened, I should say. So we're not changing any processes. We're just rolling out again the same process we rolled out. Pretty much, there's only one change, which is who the trustee is. Everything else about it is pretty much the same as how we did it in 2025, which actually did create a result.
So again, as Ian said, if you want a more detailed explanation of that, go to the ROS Media channel. We've done a specific video. We've done several videos, I think, on this. We've done updates for the membership as well, detailing this point by point by point. So, if this is a question from someone who's, been following or been, immersed in the material since 2022, sounds like there's been a bit of an information gap between when they started and maybe where they're at now. And it's up to you as the member to bridge that gap. We can't do that for you when we are proactively giving you the information weekly. So let's move on to the next one, Ian. Again, this is timeline. What is the average time period required to generate the credits needed to offset property-related liabilities?
Can you ask that again? I just didn't quite understand the beginning of that question.
Yeah, what's the average time period required to generate the credits? I think what they mean by that is the recoupment of their signature credit, needed to offset property related liabilities. So how long does the process take for signature recoupment, I guess, is the question in reality, so that they can then use that signature recoupment to discharge a mortgage?
Yeah, so obviously there's got to be signature credit that's been used on the monopoly board. So that's mortgages, loans, credit cards, tax deductions from wages, are the main ones that we focus on. So there obviously has to be those. There has to be credit and bank payments. There has to be credit put on the board, on the monopoly board. The signature credit has to have occurred. Sounds like it has, because sounds like there's a mortgage or mortgages. So then we've basically going through our process, which is you have to find out who the banks were that you interacted with for your bank payments, your mortgages, loans, credit cards, etc. You put all that together in terms of the years and estimates of how much signature credit you created in those years. It doesn't have to be exact. No one's got an exact figure. But the most important aspect of it is knowing who the banks were that you interacted with. Our team will then link those banks, which are clearing banks, with the securitizations, which is where the investment banks are holding that signature energy. They're using it. We'll link it all together. We've got an automated system, an AI system that does all that. And then, you create the grantor trust in parallel. You don't do it. Our team does it. The 1099 OID grantor trust, the asset fortress protocol. You really need the envoy protocol as well, so that you've got the full suite. Then it's a question of filing the 1099 OIDs. Our team does that through the professional tax reporting officer, tax preparer. It's all done electronically. Then there should be a wages and tax transcript, presuming that there is enough taxes paid by the taxpayers, which is the investment banks. So we'd figure all that out. It's all done in the background. You don't have to do any of that. And then once the wages and tax transcripts come out, then banking will be set up so that you can receive the recoupments into the asset fortress protocol. Ultimately, 1041 tax return is filed by the tax preparer, the reporting license holder, and then you should get the recoupment into the asset fortress protocol. It comes to the 1099 OID grantor trust first. That's the filing trust, the tax filing trust. It then moves from there to the asset fortress protocol, which is what you're going to use as your private treasury. And then you then make a donation, or you don't, but the trust makes a donation to the Republic of Old Soul Sovereign Nation. That is a donation. That is also signature credit, and that can be recouped in the subsequent year. And now your asset fortress protocol can discharge the mortgages, whatever the value of the mortgages is, can discharge those. And those discharges is, again, signature credit that's been created that can be recouped in future years. So 6 to 9 months to create all of that infrastructure, do everything I've just explained, and then you can move the properties into the asset fortress protocol, and no reporting, no taxes, privacy, banking through the treasury, the bank account connected to the asset fortress. And now you've transformed the game. You're now playing the advanced monopoly. 6 to 9 months really is my estimate of how long all these things should take. And if you've got a problem, then you need to stall. You've got to stall the enemy at the gates for 6 to 9 months.
Yeah. And that's based on historical evidence, isn't it? What happened before the sabotage? We're only going by the timeline that we mapped out when we first filed. And if we hadn't have had that sabotage, we'd have been in a very different place right now. So these aren't just numbers and timelines that we're plucking out of thin air. This is based on the fact that we've done this. We've walked the territory. So let's move on to.
We've got an A through Z, track record here. Is the head of taxes, Lisa Griffin, got her recoupments within that 6 to 9 month window. She was part of the saboteur group, which is why everybody else didn't get theirs. It's as simple as that.
Yeah. Okay. So moving on, let's go to jurisdiction and also eligibility when it comes to this. So next question is, does this apply to all land types, such as woodland, agricultural land, or is it strictly for residential dwellings?
Well, all land has got a equitable title, so it doesn't matter whether it's woodland. I mean, I guess that it might be, I'm sure we're not talking about a national park here. If it's talking about woodland or brown, what they call brown land, which is land that you can't build on, brownfield land, it's all got equitable title. There's always an equitable title that can be moved into the Asset Fortress Protocol. So as long as it's not, protected by some protection order that would cause an issue, and I'm sure we're not talking about that. Then it's no different. It's no different at all. The use of the land, the use of the property doesn't really change. Every piece of land, every piece of property's got equitable title, and that's what you're moving into the Asset Fortress Protocol.
Okay, perfect. So next question, Ian, is this protocol applicable to landlords with portfolios in South Africa, Canada, or the USA? How do the two ledgers function in these different jurisdictions?
Well, let's break it down into two parts. So part one is that you've got mortgages in a local jurisdiction, Canada, New Zealand, South Africa, somewhere in the Commonwealth, somewhere in the United States. They don't have a problem with HMRC because HMRC doesn't operate in those countries. But there might be other problems in those countries that are causing a problem to the landlords. So that the holding of the enemy at the gates is going to be a different strategy because the enemy's got different weapons. So that needs to be looked at. We will, if there's demand, we will create the avatar and the AI system for each of the countries. But the predominant problem that I saw was the UK, because HMRC has got this, they're rolling out this tax change and going back in time to make it even worse. So that's, to me, at the moment, where most of the tax problems is in the UK, from what I could see, looking around at the jurisdictions. But the mortgages and the Asset Fortress Protocol and the signature credit, it doesn't matter where the properties are, where the mortgages are, it's all the same, because everything ends up in New York. All the mortgage securitizations all end up in New York. So you've got the ability to recoup the signature credit in New York via the New York trustees. You're not recouping it from them. They're paying the taxes to the United States Treasury, which is ultimately where the recoupments are going to come from. It doesn't matter whether the mortgage was in South Africa or Canada or United States. All of the securitizations and all of the taxes being paid by the nominees, which is, the presumed nominees, which is the investment banks holding those securities, they're all in New York, pretty much.
Yeah. Okay. So next question, will commercial landlords be affected by the same systemic changes as residential landlords? And can they use the same general executor status for redress?
Well, a commercial landlord probably is a company that's got a mortgage. And, the company at the moment can set the interest costs of the mortgage against the revenues coming in at the moment. Whether that's going to stay the same, it's more difficult for HMRC to get rid of that, because a lot of businesses have got a mortgage on the factory or the office that they use. More difficult for HMRC to say you can't set the interest off. But what I suspect they're going to do, if I was HMRC, what I would do is I would say, is there a trade or a business going on? Or is it just rent?
Yeah.
So if you're running a company and you've got a factory and you've got a mortgage on the factory, there's a trade and a business going on. If you're running an office and you've got people in the office, there's a business, there's a trade or business going on. But if it is a company that's just been set up to rent property out, if you look in the tax manuals, renting property isn't regarded as a business.
Mm. Okay.
So
they've kind of got you there. Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, the walls may well be closing in on people with limited companies as well, by the sounds of things. Okay.
Unless there's a trade or a business going on. If I was HMRC, I'd say prove that there's a trade or a business going on with all of these properties you've got in your company. And if you can't prove that rental is a business, which it isn't according to HMRC, then you'll have a problem, and they'll take the interest, the set off of interest against the mortgages, cost of mortgages. They'll take that away.
Yeah, gotcha. Okay. So next section, donations and possible barriers to entry for people. So the next question here is, how can a landlord who is currently asset rich but cash poor or debanked get started with these protocols?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. The problem we've got as a Republic of Old Souls problem is that at the moment we need donations coming in to maintain all of the development of all of our services and all of our infrastructure. So we can't run this without donations coming in at the moment.
No.
What we can do is provide people with the AI and the avatar without there being any cost, so they can run their own cases, which will be provided. Those facilities will be provided without cost, subject to the the asset fortress being set up, the envoy protocol being set up, and the signature credit, which is the currency creation or infinite money protocol being set up. So you can't really do this unless you're able to put the donations together to enroll in those three programs. You need the envoy, the asset fortress, and the currency creation stroke infinite money to be able to do it. And we are trying to make that as affordable as possible. But if you don't have the budget to be able to do that, as it stands at the moment, we're not able to provide that to those that can't cash flow the enrollment. You get it all back, you see. So it's a cash flow exercise. It's not like you lose the enrollment donation. You are going to get it back in the recoupments going forward. But I get it. If people are out of budget, I get it. It's a difficult problem. I don't think that there's any easy solution to that, apart from finding somebody who might be able to provide that assistance, and then you can give them back a return. So there is, there might be somebody who's got the cash flow or got the balance, got the available, capital that they might be able to provide, and then you can give them back more than they put into you to help you. That's up to you to do that, but that's about the best I can offer, really. It's a
difficult one. It is a difficult one. I mean, there's a lot of it is down to priorities, I guess, isn't it? What's your big priority? If you don't want to lose the property or properties, but you don't have the actual cash flow available to do that, then maybe look at some of your other assets, or so-called quote unquote assets. What have you got? If you've got a £40,000 car sitting on the drive, then sell it and get a cheaper one. That might be an option. You've still got a car, you've still got transport, but now you've got the ability to move forwards with the protocols, and you're not taking the bus or walking everywhere. There's ways and means. I think if people want this badly enough and they're really up against it, then potentially they might be able to find a solution to that. It's thinking outside the box, I think.
if it were me, I would reach out to somebody who's got some capital and say, look, if you can provide, if you can advance me some cash that can be used for the donations, I'll give you back double. When the recruitment comes through, here's all the evidence of it working. Here's we'll be doing a series of videos very shortly about those that had wages and tax transcripts. We've got a process. We've got evidence of the process working. So an investor, should feel reasonably confident that they are not going to waste their money, because we have got a track record, and they get a return on their investment. And even better than that, they should be doing the signature credit recruitment themselves, shouldn't they?
Exactly.
So they get that. You can be an advocate. That's the other thing. The other solution is you can become an advocate, and you can promote the opportunity to people that you know, and then you get the passive income coming in. You get a share of all the donations that other people are funding, and that might finance your donations. The other thing you can do is get people to come to the webinars. We've got a webinar scheme, a webinar reward scheme. So if you've got lots of people coming to our webinars, you get a credit in your webinar reward scheme, which reduces the enrollment costs of the protocol. So there's two things. There's three ways you can solve that problem, potentially. That's what I would suggest. You put all those three together, and you probably solve it.
Yeah. Okay. So next question is, what are the program engagement costs, the donation costs? And can you share verified success cases of landlords who have successfully eliminated their mortgage debt?
Well, the enrollment cost depends on the circumstances. I can't really answer that because I don't know what signature credit people are recouping. The Envoy protocol, the Asset Fortress protocol, there's a fixed donation cost. But the signature credit, everyone's got a different amount that they're recouping, and it's something that you need to have a consultation with one of our specialists, and they can create a bespoke costing for you, or donation costing for you. I can't really answer that. All I can tell you is that we've got lots of people that have already done it, so it's affordable. Let's put it that way. In terms of is there a track record of recouping signature credit? At 100% there is. There is. Members of ours have had checks. Lisa Griffin had her recoupments through in around June of 2025. She was the head of the tax department. We've got over 600 million of wages and tax transcripts to evidence that the process had been.
There's a couple there, right there for you as well. That's mine and my wife's transcript before the sabotage. There's over $500,000 just on those two alone, and that's just two of many that we have filed for. So there's our evidence if you want to see that, and I've shot a video on that as well, just sort of detailing that and outlining that in more detail for people.
Yeah. So if you can recoup signature credit, which you can, and then you can use that to discharge mortgages and then recoup the discharge, because that is signature credit that is let's use common parlance. You're going to pay off the mortgages with your recoupment. Well, that paying off then is signature credit, and you recoup that as well in the future year. So is there a track record? As I've often said, and I've had this question for 40 years, because I've been building financial programs for people for 40 years. If you take a car and say, right, let's take all the wheels off the car, and somebody said to you, does that car work? You say, well, if you put the wheels on, it will work. Yeah. So the wheels work. Yeah. Because we've established that they work. If you took the engine out of the car and said, does the car work? You say, not without the engine. No. Does the engine work? Yeah, the engine works. We'll put it back in the car, then the car will work. So you see, a car is a series of component parts. And if all the components work, and then you put them all together to make the car should work. So all this is a series of components that have all got an individual track record of working. And what we've done is put them together to make up a program or a protocol. Individually, they all work. Does a trust work? Yes. Does signature credit work? Yes. Does discharging a mortgage work? Yes. Does transferring a equitable title into a trust work? Yes. Everything about the protocol individually has a track record of working.
Excellent. So you mentioned this a moment ago, but let's just go back to this maybe with a little bit more detail and just surrounding the context of this question as well. How does the referral system work for those of us who want to bring our entire property networking groups into the protocol?
Well, I mean, you first of all become an advocate, and you don't have to even be a member to be an advocate. So you don't have to be a member first. You can become an advocate. The head of our advocate team will provide you with all of the marketing collateral that you might want to use. You're basically promoting the webinars. So you get a webinar link that is your link. You provide that to people you know. So you will have a link to the webinar I did on last Saturday, the landlord webinar. You can provide that to your network. You can say, watch this. There is a pre-webinar interview that Andy and I did explaining what it's about. You've then got the webinar itself. You've got the landlord protocol, which is there's some short videos that explain it as well. You've got all this material, and there will be very soon, there will be an Ian Clifford avatar, which you can also give to your group of landlords and say, watch that. If you want to ask any question about the landlord protocol, you can get access to the avatar, which will be rolled out as soon as we can get it completed. It's partially done now. And I think that's the best way. And then get your network to come in and watch the webinars, come into our platform, come to ROS Media, start in getting involved in the material that's already here. And then when they go forward, you get a share of the donations that they've made up front, and you get a share of the back end. That's the ROS. There is a share of the back end, which is part of the ROS Freedom Plan donation. You get a share of that. So it's an amazing passive income opportunity. And if you don't want to become an advocate, but you just want to promote the webinar, then you get points. You get a reward points against the enrollment cost of your own protocol. So you can do both of those things, or you can do one or the other. It's up to you.
Yeah,
I think doing both makes perfect sense to me. So.
Makes total sense to me. Just going back to that question previously about a landlord who is asset rich but cash poor or debanked, this is another great avenue. If you know other landlords, if you are, as a landlord, you have a circle of landlords around you that would benefit from this, then refer them to the webinar, and you'll get, for everybody that stays on the webinar for at least 70% of the webinar content, you'll get a credit into a digital wallet that can go towards offsetting your protocol. And if any of those landlords decide to move forwards with the landlord protocol, then, as Ian said, you'll also get a share of the donation fee that they donate. That in itself, as that little kitty starts to build up, that would then allow you to move forwards without having to find the cash from somewhere else. So there's loads of ways to do this, guys. Okay. Well, Ian, that brings us to the end of the questions that we've had for the webinar. I mean, in terms of sort of final call to action on what people have been listening to, what people have been watching, I would simply say this, guys, the system is betting that you'll remain a tenant of the state, paying interest, paying taxes on land and property that you don't even own, or that you think you do. We've got a peaceful solution to this. So in terms of the roadmap moving forwards, last Saturday, we held that webinar. That was a closed door session specifically for property owners. That's what it was for. We deconstructed the entire protocol. So when we talk about the landlord protocol, that is a solution that involves our core protocols, and we pick which ones we know need to marry together to create that solution. We went through that step by step. Ian went through that step by step. If you haven't seen it, I'd encourage you to go and watch that. Go to the members area, watch that video, okay? If you are ready to move forwards, then again, you can go to the members area and you can book a call with one of our consultants, and they can help you build out a roadmap that works for you. If you're already moving forwards with the protocols, I would encourage you guys to go to your members dashboard after watching this, because constantly we seem to get questions where there is a big gap between where a person feels they're at and where they actually should be at in the ROS Media platform and in the members area as well. So I would say go to your dashboard, make sure that your details are accurate and that they're up to date. We can only move at the speed of the members who are prepared the best. That's just how it is, guys. So if you know other landlords that are struggling with this Section 24 or this mortgage interest, then you can do what we've said earlier. You can send out a referral link. You can become an advocate. You can invite them to the webinars. You can invite them to the platform. They can watch the landlord protocol webinar that we ran last Saturday. Every property, guys, that we move behind this shield and into an asset fortress makes our collective position stronger. So I'd encourage you all to do that and to take some action. Get yourself educated, move forward with the protocols if you're not, and book a consultation call. And if you are already in the protocols, make sure that you've played your part and that your details are up to date, because that in itself will help the team to be able to administer that for you way more effectively. So that's all I've got to say on that, Ian. As always, I love to leave the final thoughts and words with yourself.
Well, there's a solution to every problem. In fact, the problems actually invite the solution. And this solution that we're offering, which is signature credit recoupment, really is the flagship of what we're offering. And holding things in private trust is a solution that you may never have been aware of unless you had the problem. So you actually need to embrace the problem sometimes, because the problem brings the solution. There is a solution to every problem. And there's thousands and thousands of landlords out there in the UK and around the world. I want them all to know what we're offering, because it's a unique solution. There's nothing else quite like it. And you can help us to get the word out there and become an advocate, get the webinar reward points scheme, get enrolled in that. Doesn't cost anything. It's all upside. Knowledge is by far the best asset that anybody can have, and that's what we're providing is knowledge that you may never have come across before unless you had the problem. And it's not just a book. We're not just selling you a book or a course. We're actually facilitating everything for you. So pretty much everything, and we're going to give you, if there's enough demand, the avatar and the AI system, which will be unique. There won't be anything else like it out there available for those who are a part of our community.
Awesome. Well, guys, thank you once again for joining us. We appreciate you, your engagement and for your questions from the webinar. We'll be running another webinar on this coming Saturday. So if you are registering for that webinar, please also at point of registration, make sure if you do have a question surrounding the protocol or the subject matter that Ian's covering, make sure you put the question down there, because then I can pick up on that. And we'll be back here again on the media channel covering the webinar questions weekly, as we always do. So hope you have a great day. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you on the next episode. Bye for now, guys.
Bye for now.